I thank the member for Gorton. The question is that grievances be noted, and I give the call to the member for Lyons.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And today I rise really to speak on behalf of the 10 whisky distilleries that I have in my electorate of Lyons, but also the craft brewers, and also more broadly, I think, the wine producers of the highest quality wines that this country can produce. In their battle to balance the books, particularly in the case of spirits in relation to high alcohol excise imposed on them, which is an absolute impediment to seeing these businesses grow. A disincentive for small businesses to innovate, to increase their production and ultimately their capacity to be able to sell their product within Australia. It also has a significant impact, Deputy Speaker, on, of course, the tourism industry, so important to my state of Tasmania. By way of historical fact, in July of 2000, wine and beverages consisting of primarily wine became subject to a wine equalisation tax to replace the difference between the current 41% wholesale sales tax and the proposed GST at the time. The excise on beer and other beverages with less than 10% alcohol content increased to make up for the removal of the wholesale sales tax. Deputy Speaker, Australia has the highest spirits tax in the OECD group of 10. The industry needs reforming to grow. The current tax system places, I believe, an entirely unfair burden on consumers, particularly of distilled spirits, while other products are taxed at a far lower rate. I note the representations, of course, of DESICA, the industry body, and whilst they've put out a number of recommendations, not all of which I entirely agree, there are certainly a number of recommendations that I think make absolute sense, and I will be working with them to try and achieve an outcome. There are a number of anomalies within the current arrangements. Ready-to-drinks, or RTDs, and spirit drinkers pay 13 times the tax on, for example, cask wine drinkers for every standard drink. It simply doesn't make sense. In the case of wine, I acknowledge and welcome the initiative of Assistant Treasurer O'Dwyer, following on from her predecessor Frydenberg, to look at the wine equalisation tax and the rebate, and I welcome the consultative process that she has undertaken, and we want to see an industry that can grow exports and have a greater focus on quality. I know and I look forward, though, to seeing alcohol more broadly included in the government's response to the tax white paper. It is politically difficult, we understand that, but we do need to have alcohol taxation reform. Why? In the case of Tasmania, those who purchase distilled spirits pay $1 in excise per standard drink compared to 5 cents for a standard drink of cask wine. In the case of Tasmania, you pay 94 cents on a bottle of wine over $50, where a bottle of wine valued at $15 is only taxed at 28 cents per standard drink. There is an inequity there is an inconsistency there that needs addressing. Indeed, these statistics were outlined in the government Rethink discussion paper under the alcohol tax chapter published in March. And by the research that they quoted, the statistics in this report have shown just how much of a mess the current system is. The system is currently taxed on price, not the amount of alcohol you are purchasing. The long-term impact of changing the current excise will not benefit brewers or distillers over wine producers. Rather, all the industry will be a beneficiary if we can make appropriate changes. The second point is that Australia, as I mentioned, has the second highest alcohol taxation in the world, second behind Sweden, which has some of the highest taxation levels in the world. The current alcohol excise does not reflect what the government fundamentally is trying to achieve, and that is a regime of lower taxation, reduced bureaucratic red tape to allow business to prosper and thrive, and currently the alcohol tax is not in keeping with the overall intent of the government in looking at ways to grow the economy and create jobs. The level of tax is indeed an unfair burden on craft distillers and brewers right across Australia, but of course particularly in my home state of Tasmania, which, as I mentioned, I have 10 commercial craft whisky distillers or spirits distillers. By way of an example, the breathalyser doesn't discriminate against what alcohol you drink, rather it operates on how much you've drunk. Breathalyzers don't suggest whether you've drunk wine, beer or spirits. The taxation system in this country should indeed be no different. That is, the taxation system should not discriminate against what alcohol you've drunk or how much you've paid for it. The system should judge you on how much alcohol you have consumed, irrelevant of what type. Indeed, if GST is levied on a price basis or how much of the product you purchase, then indeed the alcohol excise should be levied on how much alcohol you consume, therefore leading towards exploring a volumetric rate of tax seems rather logical. Of course, there is drinkers that are at risk, but the research doesn't suggest that the changes that have been made or the varying taxation rates that exist has any influence over the type of products that we've seen. We saw the Alco Pops debate, and what that did was just move drinkers from one type of alcohol to another type of alcohol. And the data is there for anyone that's willing to look and see. And I think we should all be focused on trying to develop a system of taxation in this sector that is fairer, that allows growth, that allows areas where our country can compete on an export basis, but also my state is doing its best, but is being impeded by the current taxation regime. The economy will benefit. The current taxation system is not supporting innovation or growth or development. Rather, it is actually stifling it. The 10 small distillers in my electorate take a prominent position and are doing their best to generate wealth and create jobs in their local communities, both directly and, of course, indirectly. Brewers and distillers provide jobs, particularly around tourism, which is an increasingly important industry and sector within my state. And indeed, as I say, creates jobs for communities. They become symbols very much of their local community. You know, I think of some of the icons within the whisky industry, like Bill Lark and his business. I think of Solomon's Cove, that's produced the world's best whisky. I think of Nant at Bothwell, redefining that small country town. I note the support of the Minister for Cities. Indeed, Jamie Briggs has written opinion pieces to this point. And I think it's really important that we have both South Australia and Victoria and New South Wales and Western Australia, and my home state, of course, on a similar level. So I'd just like to pay, Deputy Speaker, acknowledge, as I say, those whisky distillers that are blazing a trail in my home state of Tasmania and in my electorate particularly. Straits Brands on the West Tamar, Hangar 43 in the Northern Midlands, John Cole and his operation up at Wilmot, Redlands, Redlands estate in the Derwent Valley, Overeem and Sheen. It will be an absolutely stunning place for people to visit once it's completed. Nant, I mentioned at Bothwell, Peter Bignell from Belgrove at Kempton, Bill Lark, who could forget Bill Lark, the doyen of the Australian whisky industry, Bill McHenry at Port Arthur on the Tasman Peninsula, and Nonsuch at Sorrel. Deputy Speaker, this is a sector that has the potential to grow, along with the craft brewers in my electorate, along with the very high quality wine producers in the state of Tasmania, and their businesses can be supported with changes to the current taxation system. Thank you.